This is Steve Zeltzer with KPFA WorkWeek Radio, and I'm with Brian Crowell, who is a longtime educator, activist, was a steward at the Berkeley Federation of Teachers, and he has been engaged in a long battle, really, to defend not only himself, but all teachers in California. And he's had some important lessons that he's learned as a result of his struggles as an educator, trying to defend teachers in the Berkeley Federation of Teachers. Welcome to WorkWeek Radio.
Hi, Steve. Good afternoon.
So, Brian, why don't you talk about, we've interviewed you before on WorkWeek Radio, about what is going on, your recent developments, and what you've discovered in your fight to protect teachers from PAR and what PAR is.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Brian Crowell. I'm a KPFA board member, educator, activist for teachers' rights. Recently, I received a state issue complaint from the Public Employment Relations Board regarding discrimination in the BPAR program.
What is the BPAR program?
The BPAR program is a remedial discriminatory program for teachers who receive unsatisfactory evaluations. They are then subjected to this remedial process that leads to termination, which I had been investigating since going back to 2010, really. And so this year, the state issued a complaint against the Berkeley Federation of Teachers, in particular BFT President Cathy Campbell, for discrimination and retaliation. And we've got a hearing coming up next week on the issue.
And why was she issued a complaint against her, what she's been doing, and what has she been doing?
Well, as I complained about years ago, was that the people being referred to BPAR or PAR were disproportionately African American, disproportionately Latino, disproportionately over 55 years of age, maxed out on the salary schedule. And what my eyes saw at the time was that it appeared to be a pattern and practice of categorical discrimination and also against union activists. And so basically, what happened was I filed a public records request, and the data showed that what, in fact, I had been complaining about was empirically true. What I didn't know and found out years later through discovery was that Cathy Campbell was part and parcel leading the discriminatory policy and doing things with the district to continue the policy, and that's why the state issued a complaint.
And you began to get involved in this because you were starting to represent teachers in Berkeley Federation of Teachers who were themselves being disciplined in this PAR program.
Yes, I started off actually getting teachers referred to BPAR out of BPAR. That's how this whole thing started. I was basically seeing that they were being unfairly targeted. You know, one administrator would come in and give them a bad evaluation. The next day they'd get a stellar evaluation. There was no consistency in the process. There was another African-American teacher named Valerie Trahan who I defended, in which Cathy Campbell actually tried to terminate her in the PAR program. So I started off defending teachers in PAR, then investigating PAR, and then found out the union and the district in tandem came after me after I exposed PAR.
And you yourself were put in PAR?
Yes, I was. I was thrown into PAR in May of 2013. I never started PAR. The fall of that same year, I got sick and was on medical leave after that. But yes, that was the immediate response to my disclosures.
Many of these teachers who have been put in PAR have serious health problems, being bullied and end up on disability and end up being driven out of the classroom. Is that true?
Yes. I mean, well, not only out of the classroom, out of the profession. The data we've collected expands into Oakland, into San Francisco. It expands into Los Angeles. It's a statewide problem. And yes, the teachers suffer from anything from PTSD to panic disorder to mental health problems. It deteriorates your health because here you have a union acting as a supervisory employee. Your so-called coach is acting as a supervisor and who is documenting the quote evidence to fire you out of your job, and then in turn going to this kangaroo court panel, and the union is firing you out of your job. So it gives the districts cover, the political cover they need to pull off what they couldn't pull off on their own. And that's the issue.
And the president of the BFT, who you have discovered was conspiring with management, Why don't you talk about that? Because it seems like it's illegal. They're legally required to represent the teachers. How can they be in conspiracy with management?
Well, I think, the Ed Code specifically says, and this is about PAR, it says in Ed Code 44503B that the unions cannot participate in management or supervisory functions. That's specifically in the Ed Code, and that code is under PERB's jurisdiction. Clearly, you can't fairly represent your members if you're participating in firing them, particularly if you're adopting management's position that all of a sudden the teacher is no longer competent without doing your own investigation. The unions only take the information from the management. They are not doing Weingarten rights. They're not allowing representation during evaluations. They're not taking their own notes. They're not taking their own observations. They are not doing due diligence to see if the process is legit. But interestingly, I found in evidence that Cathy Campbell herself was collecting observations on all the teachers at Berkeley High School, according to the district, for her own, to develop her own collection of data. I'm curious to ask Cathy Campbell whether or not she told the district she's collecting their observations. Is she keeping them in a secret file somewhere? And I'm also going to ask Cathy Campbell why she was collecting observations from the teachers at Berkeley High School. And I would assume that she probably suspected that the process was unfair, biased, and dubious, yet perhaps didn't have the courage to actually say so. So this is all the good stuff that I got in evidence via discovery that I fully intend to ask her about.
And you also found out that she was actually being paid by the district to be in this PAR program?
Yes, Cathy Campbell is being paid by the Berkeley Unified School District a stipend to sit on the BPAR panel, in my view, for the purposes of a supervisory employee, because she's acting as a supervisor on behalf of the district. So she's not acting as I read the history of unions and labor law, a union steward whose job is to protect the members who pay the dues, who support her salary. So really what's happened, she's basically a functionary of the district.
And Susan Solomon, who's the president of United Educators of San Francisco, has said that PAR is a program that the union supports, and it's embedded in a ballot initiative that was passed in San Francisco, which actually uses a tax. Can you talk about that?
Yes, the Measure A parcel tax from 2008 was sold to the taxpayers of San Francisco as professional development. What they didn't tell the San Francisco taxpayers is that the program was used to target teachers over the age of 55 and maxed out on the salary schedule and whistleblowers. So basically, it's a program to force teachers to retire. They did not tell the parcel taxpayers that in San Francisco, and that's why they buried it in Appendix F in the very back of the contract where nobody can find it. You've got the superintendent legally overriding the union's majority on the PAR panel in violation of the Ed Code. You have fraud against the taxpayers of San Francisco. The unions have failed, in my view, is because they don't want to take on the imbalance of power that management has over terms and conditions of employment. So what they've done is basically have become joint employers. And when you have a joint employment relationship, you no longer have a union, you no longer have a duty of fair representation, you no longer have any representation. Matter of fact, the union, in effect, disappears. And that's basically what's happened.
And there was a caucus in UESF, United Educators of San Francisco, Educators for EDU, Educators for Democratic Union, and apparently some of them were targeted, put in PAR, in retaliation for their being active in the union. Is that a unique situation, or is that something that maybe is going on throughout the state of California?
Well, as I know, the EDU caucus, I was told by a teacher in San Francisco that the EDU caucus, I believe led by Lita Blanc, actually ran against PAR when she ran for union president. She ran opposing PAR. When she got into office, she didn't do anything about it. But yes, I was told a lot of the people in the EDU caucus were then targeted, thrown into PAR, and then forced out of the district. But yes, I get calls from Los Angeles Unified School District.
What's going on there?
You have teacher group called, they call themselves the Los Angeles Labor Group. And basically they're the group of teachers that came together to fight PAR and to fight teacher jail. And they found that...
What is teacher jail?
Teacher jail is when of course,
like kids jail.
Yeah, I mean, teacher jail is when the teacher is placed on administrative leave and ordered and given a directive in writing that they cannot leave their house between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. They are literally put on house arrest in their house without charges, without knowing why they're charged. And they will sit, and the union, UTLA, has done nothing about it, and they sit and languish in their homes for literally 2 to 3 years sometime, waiting to be fired. But the demographics of the people in teacher jail are the same as the demographics, as Alex Caputo Pro admitted: disproportionate African American, disproportionate over 40, and disproportionate LGTB, as he was quoted in The Nation magazine. The UTLA union knows, and the CTA and the CFT knows absolutely what's going on. However, they have failed to actually address the issue, and as a consequence, we have this teacher shortage that we hear so much about, which the state created.
In other words, the senior teachers are being driven out because there's a financial incentive since they're paying higher pay to them?
Absolutely. Not only the financial incentive, it's also, you have CalSTRS. Obviously, the higher you are up on CalSTRS, I believe you get a 2.4 multiplier at a certain age. Obviously CalSTRS doesn't want that kind of pension liability. So not only do the school districts have a financial incentive to get rid of senior teachers, the state itself, and Jerry Brown went to the California State Supreme Court recently trying to undo the constitutional right for our pensions to be guaranteed, which is directly tied into what we're talking about. So the school districts have used PAR as basically an attack on pensions by other means. It's almost like Vietnam, an undeclared war, but the data in the stories and the testimonies are really sad.
Now, you fought this legally, and you've, you've gotten subpoenaed a lot of information. The kind of information you've learned in this whole process has ended up in this PERB charge. How did this happen?
Basically, in a long discovery battle through the Superior Court lawsuit against Berkeley Unified School District, that was essentially a multi-year battle to get documents, including documents not only from the district, but also documents from the union. In turn, we're going to September of 2017. Lo and behold, I find Cathy Campbell is blended in with all the documents from the district assistant superintendents, and only then did I actually understand that it wasn't just the school district came after me. It was actually Cathy Campbell, in a lot of respects, was leading the charge to exactly what the teachers asked me to investigate, which is age and racial discrimination in the PAR program. So it was then that I filed the unfair labor practice charge and met the prima facie discrimination threshold. And so now I will get my hearing. I'll get my day in court.
And are they fighting it? And who's representing Cathy Campbell?
Stuart Weinberg is a longtime union lawyer for not only BFT, but also USF Union in San Francisco. Stuart Weinberg is representing and using union money and dues to fight me. So it's actually kind of ironic. The teachers in Berkeley are paying their union dues to fight me because the union wants to keep a discriminatory program that's targeting their own members. And I also found out that since my disclosure, only the kindergarten through 8th grade teachers have been placed in PAR in Berkeley. They have basically let the high school teachers live in peace, which is not fair either. That's another issue I'm contesting.
And Stuart Weinberg is with the big firm, formerly Van Borg. Do you think he's aware that this is really an illegal practice that's going on?
I think that honestly, he's been around long enough to understand that it's not normal for a union to be participating in the disciplining of their own members. In the same breath, he gets paid, his salary and his workers and his employees get paid by the union. So I think as long as he gets paid, I don't think he's going to take an ethical position. That's just my theory. I don't know. I've never met him. I've never talked to him outside of about 20 seconds at a CFT convention, but I don't know what he really thinks. I guess we'll find out.
And at the Unified School District in San Francisco, I asked Mark Sanchez, who's on the board, about the PAR program and that it was being used as a disciplinary program. And he said that the attorney for the San Francisco Unified School District said it's quite legal to do what they're doing.
Well, I think the problem is that the attorneys represent not only the superintendent, but they also represent the board. The problem with school boards is they don't have their own investigative powers or policies or regulations. So they in turn get all their information from the administration, which in turn gets their advice from the lawyers. So basically, unfortunately, school boards are basically a rubber stamp for the administration, unlike a county system where you actually have some checks and balances, where the county board of education actually has independent power from the CFO of a county. And that's basically one of the conflicts of interest that's just really sad in public education.
Now, Margaret Reyes, who was a teacher in San Francisco, has spoken out publicly about PAR. She refused to go in it because her principal was bullying her and on the PAR committee, and she's moving to be fired, and also this commission on teacher credentials is moving against her. Is this the lesson that if you do stand up and speak out, you're going to get targeted and your career destroyed?
Yes, I mean, as we learned from Kathleen Carroll, who had a successful lawsuit against the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, the CTC is the end of this journey. So the first step is PAR. The second step, you lose your job with the Commission on Professional Competence. And the third step is the Committee on Credentials with the CTC takes your credential and you can't work in California. But the essence of it is at all three phases, you have teachers disciplining teachers. There are teachers on the PAR panel, there are teachers on Commission on Professional Competence, and then there are teachers at the CTC Committee on Credentials. So again, they can't pull it off but for the collusion of the union, and that's the issue. So California has set up basically a statewide company union.
And one of the things we also learned is that teachers who are being forced into PAR and are threatened with being fired are leaving, retiring, and signing non-disclosure agreements. What is that all about, a non-disclosure agreement?
The non-disclosure agreement basically is you promise not to sue the district for discrimination, retaliation, or any violation under FEHA law or DFEH or federal law or Title VII. Basically, you are signing away your rights to actually bring a cause of action in court against the illegal behavior, because frankly, the liability since PAR started in 1999, if you add up all the teachers who were forced to retire early or quit, is in the billions, easily.
And is this legal for a public employee to sign a non-disclosure agreement that they're not going to pursue illegal practices by a district?
Well, the districts, it's kind of the carrot and the stick. They give you, I've heard story, we'll give you $100,000 to just quit. We'll give you $150,000 to just go away. In other words, we'll give you a year or two of salary to just go away. We won't report you to the CTC. Just take this money in exchange for giving up your right to sue us. So basically what's happened is a teacher who is about to be fired and about to be placed on administrative leave doesn't have the income to fight. And that's why AB 215, the law that Jerry Brown signed into effect, was very, very harmful. Basically, you were fired without trial, which is basically, in my view, a bill of attainder and unconstitutional.
And it sounds like we're talking about systemic corruption in the education system in California.
Yes, I have no false illusions. I would say 99% of the unions and school districts are opposed to my position on PAR and my position on teacher jail and what I'm trying to do to advocate. The state, unfortunately, has created a situation where it's kind of locked itself in because it's been doing it so long. But now the system is starting to, we see all the strikes, we see the unrest, but the strikes.
Teachers are fed up.
Yes, the teachers are fed up because, in my view, it's the unfair labor practices that are driving the strikes, not just the size of classrooms and librarians and things of that nature, which are important, but it's the bullying and harassment and the mistreatment and the lack of support. That's what's driving the strikes. And so now I think we're finally getting to a point where we can actually address the issue.
And if this charge is sustained by PERB, what is going to be the result, not just for Cathy Campbell, but this whole system?
Well, I think it's the beginning of, we have the savings clause in the back of every contract, which says if any part of this contract is deemed illegal by PERB or by a court, that section of the contract will be nullified. In my view, hopefully it's the beginning of the end of the PAR program and something actually tangible to replace it, actually real professional development and not just kind of a gaslighting technique to make teachers quit.
And these senior teachers who have been removed, African-American teachers, Latino teachers, because of discrimination, what right do they have to go back and get their jobs back?
That's an excellent question. If it's, obviously there's a statute of limitations issue, there's issues of when of when you found out, like I did, delayed discovery. If you do,
It took years, didn't it?
took years. I mean, it took me literally years after the fact. But had I not sued and had I not done discovery, they would have got away with it. So I think teachers need to, take a cue from me, and actually, just for the purpose of documentation and finding out what the districts are hiding, what the unions are hiding, maybe they can get some relief. But they're never going to be made whole. Some people have passed away. The health problems are untold, but you're never going to...
Suicides?
Yes. I can't tell you how many sad stories of teachers, and they have something in common. All of them blew the whistle or complained, or they were activist union people, or they just turned 55 one year, and the district basically said, you have amnesia, you forgot how to teach. And it's really a tragic story, unreported. CNN, et cetera, is not going to pick this up.
And you're speaking out now, and they haven't beaten you down.
No, actually, as time goes on, it's amazing what happens. I actually feel like myself and the people I've helped, we're actually getting stronger. Because 5 years ago, people were saying I was crazy, nobody's listening to you. But that's not the case. I actually have the state listening to me now, and with increasing activity. So I think we're being vindicated. We were always right. We were just early.
And the AFT nationally knows about it. Do they know about it? And is this going to come up in the NEA, the CTA, and the AFT, the CTA in California?
I would say kicking and screaming. I would say is the more people who bring this issue to them over time, it's kind of like Thurgood Marshall's, Brown v. Board of Education, which was a 20-year legal process and a lot of losses up until the decision. So kicking and screaming, the unions are going to have to separate themselves from the state, and in turn, they're going to have to separate themselves from the district. But that's where I see this process going.
Okay, well, I want to thank you. We've been talking with Brian Crowell. He's a longtime educator and also has been leading the fight in California against the PERB program for discrimination and for harassment, bullying of teachers. So thanks for joining us on WorkWeek Radio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.